Beyond the Black Sea starts in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, where we have 3 nights. We then take a 6-hour train journey to Kamieniec-Podilsky. We have 2 nights here before we start to head west towards the city of Lviv, where we have 2 nights. After our stay in Lviv, the tour takes an overnight train journey to Odessa on the Black Sea. The journey then heads west through Moldova, where we have 2 nights, and into Romania. In Romania we have a total of 7 nights, stopping at Brasov, where Dracula's castle is located. The journey then heads to Sibiu before crossing the Carpathian Mountains into Bucharest, the capital. After a 2-night stay in Bucharest, the tour heads south, crossing the Danube and into Bulgaria. Here we stay a total of 4 nights in the cities of Veliko Tarnovo and Plovdiv before we head into Istanbul for our final 3 nights on the Black Sea. Beyond the Black Sea starts in Kiev, a city that lies on the Dnieper River. It is overlooked by the 102-meter statue of the motherland. During the Soviet Union, Kiev was considered the 3rd most important city behind only Moscow and St. Petersburg. Indeed, the city is the center of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. Lying at the heart of it is Beshursk Lava Monastery, built in the 11th century. This is a cluster of gold-domed churches that are a feast for the eyes. And beneath these churches are caves that are lined with the bodies of mummified monks. Kiev has many attractions, and one of the most interesting is Andrew's Descent. It links Upper Kiev with Lower Kiev and is one of the oldest and most attractive streets in the city. The first settlements were founded here more than 3,000 years ago, and it is a unique reflection of old Kiev lifestyle. Many great writers and artists lived in this street. Indeed, this is the house of Mikhail Bulgakov, the great Ukrainian writer. Kiev is often described as Berlin without the tourist. This is Maidan Square, where the revolution took place in 2013. Today, it's a place where people hang out. It's peaceful and it's beautiful. On the 26th of April 1986, the worst nuclear disaster in the history of the world occurred. Chernobyl. This is Reactor 4, 2013, our first group. And this is Reactor 4 today, with a giant sarcophagus slid over the top. And this is Pripyat, the nearest town to Chernobyl. This is where the nuclear scientists and power plant workers lived. After the accident, the residents had to leave within hours. They were told that they would be back in 3 days. They never returned. Today we see the scattered remnants of their lives that they left behind. Our visit here is eerie, it's haunting, and it's powerful. This was Pripyat's Grand Theatre. Ballets and operas were staged here, and performers from all over the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe used to come. This beautiful monument honours the firefighters who lost their lives in the battle for Chernobyl and for Europe. This was once a booming city where workers from all over the Soviet Union received the highest pay. They had access to Western goods, Western cigarettes and clothes. Pripyat is only 2 hours from Kiev. But as nature reclaims the land, it is a poignant reminder of what an apocalypse would look like 30 years on. The next afternoon, we leave Kiev Central Station for the 6-hour journey to Kamieniec-Podilsky. We arrive early in the evening and we're greeted with the magnificent sight of the city's castle. This 11th century town is perched on a sheer wall rock island above the Smotrich River, which forms a natural moat. It's connected by a narrow isthmus to an impossibly beautiful fort. The fortress was built between the 10th and 13th century, and it's in the shape of a polygon, with 9 towers of all shapes and sizes. The structure is almost unassailable, and the view from the Turkish bridge is one of the most iconic that Ukraine has to offer. The next morning, we take a comfortable 4-hour coach ride to the Ukrainian Habsburg city of Lviv. This city holds a unique position as both the birthplace of Ukrainian national identity and as a multicultural melting pot. Just 80 kilometers from the Polish border, Lviv is one of Ukraine's most elegant cities. It is its window to Europe. Founded in the 13th century, the city's imperial charm is rooted in centuries of rule by major European powers. Architectural influences here come from Poland, from Austro-Hungarian Empire, from the Soviet Union, and from Germany. Its ornate buildings and bustling street cafes are reminiscent of Vienna or Prague. Until the early 20th century, a variety of ethnic groups including Poles, Ukrainians, Jews and Germans lived side by side with relative ease. Jewish life flourished alongside Ukrainian culture and literature. After our 2-night stay in Lviv, we leave from its historic railway station for the overnight journey to Odessa on the Black Sea. We arrive at Odessa station early in the morning. This great Black Sea port city was founded by a decree of Catherine the Great in 1794. One of Odessa's most iconic landmarks are these, the Potemkin Stairs, made famous by Sergei Eisenstein film Battleship Potemkin. Equally iconic is the Opera House, one of the greatest in the world. Many great performers have sung here, including Pavarotti and Domingo. Enrico Caruso's last performance was here. Odessa's 19th century architecture has more of a Mediterranean feel, having heavily been influenced by French and Italian styles. Odessa is an ensemble of timeless elegance. It is simply one of the world's most beautiful cities. The drive to Chisinau in Moldova is an exciting one because we pass through a country that doesn't really exist, Transnistria. Separated from Moldova in 1992 because of a civil war, Transnistria has its own currency, its own government and its own flag. After the breakup with the Soviet Union, the people here wanted to remain with Russia. But it is more Soviet than the Soviet Union ever was. Our visit to Transnistria is a fascinating time capsule. This really is back in the USSR. After our lunch in Transnistria, we cross the border once more into Moldova and into the capital city, Chisinau. Moldova's great claim to fame is that it's the least visited country in all of Europe, and Chisinau, the capital, is the least visited capital city in all of Europe. Yet this is a beautiful city, perched on 7 hills, surrounded by lakes. It's a city of parks, of fountains, and a city where many great writers like Chekhov lived for many years. This is a building where Brezhnev worked as a young apparatchik before moving to the Kremlin in Moscow. During our 2 nights in Moldova, we visit Melesti Mici, the largest winery in the world. 250 kilometers of limestone cellars store 2 million bottles of wine. Within this complex, the streets are named after wine, for example, Cabernet. We have special permission to visit the winery when it's closed, and because of this we see no tourists. We explore this incredible labyrinth by golf buggies. The next morning we drive to Romania. From Chisinau to the border is just 1 hour, and by leaving earlier we avoid a lot of border traffic. By mid-afternoon we arrive in Brașov, Transylvania, fairy tale Romania. This is a typical Saxon town where the church is in the main square and the whole settlement is walled. Multicoloured Baroque edifices surround the Gothic-style black church. Our boutique hotel lies right on the medieval town square, and the idyllic setting is completed by the ring of the Carpathian Mountains. Perched on a high rock above a valley in the Carpathian Mountains is Bran Castle, otherwise known as Dracula's Castle. Bram Stoker's mythical character has been immortalised in the Transylvanian Alps. Because we are friends with the curator of the castle, we are able to visit when all the tourists have gone, and it makes for a really exciting evening. The next day we leave Brașov and head for the town of Sighișoara. This town is the last inhabited citadel in all of Europe, and it is the most visited place in all of Romania. But because we stay here overnight, we have the whole place to ourselves after the tourists have left. Sighișoara was founded by German merchants 850 years ago. And this is the house of Vlad Tepes, otherwise known as Vlad the Impaler, or Dracula. This is where he was born in 1431. The next day we leave for the town of Sibiu, but before we get there we stop here, Viskri, an old Saxon village. This medieval fortification epitomizes rural romance of Transylvania. Surrounded by farmland, the only sounds that can be heard in the village are the rattle of the horse carts and the blacksmith workshop. Viskri is a fascinating visit because it's like stepping back 200 years in time. After lunch with the farmer's family, we move on to nearby Sibiu. Sibiu is a highly sophisticated capital of Transylvania and European culture capital in 2007. Apart from the main square, the city is a remarkable ensemble of Saxon architecture. Because of these beautiful Saxon windows, Sibiu is often referred to as a city of 1,000 eyes. During our 2 nights in Sibiu, we explore all of the secret corners and courtyards and patios of the city, as well as the city's fortification walls, which were built 850 years ago. This morning we depart Sibiu for Bucharest, across the Carpathian Mountains on the Trans-Fagarasan Highway. This is the road Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear described as the best road in the world. It was built during Ceausescu's time between 1970 and 1974 to connect the cities of Sibiu and Bucharest. 6 million kilos of dynamite were used to blast through the mountains. Because of weather, the Trans-Fagarasan Highway is only open between June and October. To say that this is an exhilarating ride is a massive understatement. We arrive in the Romanian capital of Bucharest by mid-afternoon. The second largest building in the world is the Romanian Parliament. 9 districts were destroyed by Nicolae Ceausescu to build this sinister fortress. Today it is still the Parliament and dominates the centre of the city. Yet since those drab days, Bucharest has reinvented itself into a dynamic and eclectic city. This is a Lipscani area or Old Town. It was destroyed during the Second World War, but it has been rebuilt and finished in 2013. It is now an amazing labyrinth of bars and restaurants. This is Karakubeira in Lipscani, the oldest and most famous restaurant in Bucharest. Such is the fame of this restaurant, we book it 2 months in advance. After 2 nights in Bucharest, we cross the Danube into Bulgaria. Only the Danube separates these two countries, but we leave the Saxon world and enter the Ottoman one. These two countries are polar opposites. By lunchtime, we arrive at Veliko Tarnovo, former capital of Bulgaria. This city of Tsars is carved into the mountainside, high above a bend in the Yantra River. And right opposite the river and dominating the skyline is the icon image of Veliko Tarnovo and one of the most recognizable in Bulgaria, Zarovets Fortress. Because of 3 rings of fortification and a man-made abyss, it stood unconquered for 3 centuries. After our 2 nights in Veliko Tarnovo, we drive through the Valley of Flowers to the oldest continuously inhabited city in Europe, Plovdiv. This settlement is 8,000 years old and has hosted 7 civilizations. These layers of history are evident throughout the whole city. Built on 7 hills, this is a city of cobblestone lanes and National Revival-era houses. Plovdiv occupies the central part of Bulgaria and lies on the junction between Belgrade and Istanbul. It was rightfully awarded in 2019 European City of Culture. This is Plovdiv's wonderful amphitheatre, originally built for gladiator fights. Today it seats 3,000 and it is used for classical music concerts and operas. After 2 nights in Plovdiv, we leave on the highway for the 6-hour drive to Istanbul. The border crossing between the 2 countries is easy and by mid-afternoon we're in Istanbul. The only city in the world to be built upon 2 continents. To arrive in Istanbul is to know that you are arriving in somewhere very, very special. Yet Istanbul's location attracted marauding armies from Greeks, Romans and Venetians until finally the Ottomans came. Together, they melded one of the great skylines of the world. During our 3 nights in Istanbul, we visit the covered bazaar. 30,000 square meters, 60 streets and over 4,000 shops make it the largest and oldest bazaar in the world. Inside the bazaar also contains workshops, a mosque, a hammam, a police station, a post office and banks. A city within a city. Istanbul has magnificent mosques like Hagia Sophia, Topkapi Palace and the Blue Mosque, but it is more than the sum of these parts. It is the vibe and the diversity of the people that live within this magnificent metropolis. Istanbul is an electric end chapter to beyond the Black Sea. What makes this tour so special is that few tourists have discovered these countries, and it is unique to travel directors. It is undiscovered Europe with a capital U. And of course, it's filled with our trademark surprises.